In the beginning, before any mountains rose or rivers flowed over the land, all was silence and darkness. But then, with a single word, God's voice broke through the void and light appeared, separating day from night. The waters receded, giving way to dry ground. The sun shone in the sky, the stars twinkled, and the moon lit up the night. Creation took shape, the sky, the earth, the sea, and the Creator, in every detail, shaped the beauty of a perfect world. It was then that, at the height of this majestic work, the Creator did something even grander. From the dust of the earth, he began to form the first man, not like the animals, not just another creature in the garden. That would be special. Every curve, every detail of your body, sculpted with purpose, and when everything was ready, God leaned over and breathed the breath of life. Adam opened his eyes. For the first time, man saw the light. Air filled his lungs, the heat of the sun touched his skin, and before him, the whole of Eden seemed to pulse with life. Leafy trees loaded with fruit, clear rivers cutting through the valley, flowers of all colors adorning the ground. Creation was alive, vibrant, and Adam was part of it. But silence still hovered, not of absence but of expectation. Adam existed, but why? Why had it been created? God led him through the garden, showing every detail. This is all yours, the Creator seemed to say. Man was not just there to exist, he had a purpose, to care for, name each being, rule over all of creation. Still, in the midst of so much perfection, something was missing. Adam felt it, although he still didn't know how to name it. Something deep, an absence that echoed in the garden itself. And the Creator, with infinite wisdom, was already preparing the next act of this story. Adam lived in Eden, surrounded by life in its purest form. Every plant, every animal seemed to have been placed there for a purpose, and he could feel this connection with everything around him. However, the garden was not just a place of beauty, it was also the stage of a greater plan, where the Creator had left a clear instruction. Of every tree in the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for on the day that you eat it, you will certainly die. But why such a specific order in such a perfect place? Why, among so many options, was a single tree marked as prohibited? Had God really created a risk in the midst of all that harmony? Or was there something deeper behind it? Freedom was part of the plan from the beginning. Adam was not a prisoner in Eden, but a being made to choose, to act with conscience and love. The Creator wanted a relationship based on trust, not obligation. The prohibition was not a trap, but an invitation to fidelity. Did Adam understand these words? Did you really know the weight of that instruction? All of Eden lay before him, vast and abundant, but that single tree stood there, untouched, like a mystery in the center of the garden. And while man dedicated himself to caring for each living being, naming animals and exploring creation, the feeling that something was missing still grew within him. He was not alone. There was the Creator, there were the animals, the splendor of Eden. But even so, a silent emptiness seemed to echo in his heart. And then the Creator, who saw what Adam still could not understand, began to act. Something extraordinary was about to happen. Adam fulfilled the purpose given to him with zeal. Each being in the garden received a name from his words, and creation responded to his care with harmony. He saw life multiply around him, birds in pairs, animals in companies, trees blooming together. But amidst all this, he was the only one of his kind, different, complete, but alone. The Creator watched. Adam's silence was not one of ingratitude, but of an absence that he did not yet understand. Man needed something more, someone who was part of him, someone with whom he could share the fullness of that paradise. And then God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him." The moment was decisive. Adam, tired after a day of caring for the garden, felt a deep sleep take over him, a different rest, coming directly from the Creator. While man slept, God acted in a mysterious and powerful way. He did not form another being from the dust, but touched Adam's own body. There on the man's side, God removed a part, a rib, an intimate fragment, close to the heart. And with that piece, he molded someone new, not a copy, not someone inferior, but a complementary being, a presence capable of reflecting the same glory and divine image. When Adam opened his eyes, he saw before him what would be called woman. And when he saw her, something deep lit up in his being. He was no longer the only one. She was part of him, formed not from afar, but from within. Adam recognized, "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." Eden had never been so complete. But in the midst of this newfound perfection, the Creator knew that each choice was just beginning. If you're enjoying this story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any Bible stories. The next revelations will surprise you and transform the way you see these stories. The garden now seemed more alive than ever. Adam and Eve walked together among the leafy trees, exploring creation with joy and wonder. The gentle wind blew through the leaves, the sound of streams echoed in the distance, and everything reflected the peace of a world untouched by error. They did not know fear, pain, or shame. All they saw was beauty. All they felt was fulfillment. But there was something at the center of Eden that stood out. Among so many trees that bore sweet and pleasant fruits, two were different. The tree of life and, a little further, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God had been clear. You may freely eat from every tree in the garden, but from this one, no. Why? Why put a restriction in the middle of so much freedom? Was it a test? An arbitrary limit? No. It was something much deeper. The Creator had given them the gift of choice, a valuable gift, the freedom to love, trust, and obey. But true love can only exist when there is the possibility of rejection. The tree was the symbol of this freedom. Eating its fruit would mean more than just tasting something physical. It was the decision to define right and wrong for oneself, to turn away from the Creator as the source of truth. Adam and Eve understood this limit. They lived surrounded by everything they needed. The Creator visited them, spoke to them. The garden was abundant. There was no shortage. There was no need. But still, that tree was there, motionless, with its fruits hanging silently. And as the sun gilded Eden and the days passed in perfect harmony, something else was moving, something that human eyes had not yet seen, but that was already approaching, hidden in the shadows. The garden remained splendid, but amidst the perfection, a subtle presence approached, lurking between the low branches. In the silence of Eden, where every leaf whispered peace, something moved cunningly. It was the serpent, a beautiful creature at first sight, but charged with a dark purpose. She hadn't just come to watch. There was intention in every step, in every attentive look. Eve walked among the trees, contemplating the abundance around her. She knew the Creator's words well. The instruction was clear as the purity of that place. But the serpent, in its cunning, did not appear with threats or screams. She chose doubt. And it was with an almost sweet whisper that he approached Eva, observing her curiosity. "Is it true that God said you cannot eat from any tree in the garden?" The seemingly innocent question echoed in the woman's heart. It was not a direct attack, but a subtle twisting of the words, a distorted truth. Eva responded firmly, as if trying to push away the shadow that appeared. "We can eat the fruits of the trees, but God said not to touch the tree of knowledge, or we will die." And then came the most dangerous blow. The serpent smiled. If a serpent can smile, and spoke softly, "You will certainly not die. On the contrary, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." It was at that moment that the seed of doubt took root. It was not the fruit that attracted Eve, but the promise. Be like God, knowing what was still hidden. What would it mean to have this power? She looked at the fruit. The color seemed more vivid, the aroma sweeter, and the serpent's voice echoed in his mind like an insistent whisper. But as the silence of the garden seemed to break with tension, Adam still didn't know what was about to happen. Eva remained motionless for a moment, her gaze fixed on the fruit. Something inside her struggled, the memory of the Creator's words, the purity of the garden. But the serpent's voice still echoed, soft, seductive. The fruit looked so harmless. There was nothing threatening about his appearance. On the contrary, it seemed even more beautiful than before. The desire to understand, to possess what seemed to be a divine secret, grew in his heart. And then, in an almost automatic gesture, his fingers touched the fruit. Nothing happened. No storms formed, no thunder, just the silence of Eden, as if everything was suspended in that moment. Eve took the fruit to her mouth and bit. The sweet juice ran down her lips, but what followed wasn't the taste. It was a sensation, something different, an invisible weight, a new, strange perception. The garden, once so vibrant, seemed to lose some of its shine. The peace that filled the heart was now disturbed. And then, without hesitation, she sought out Adam. He was nearby, watching, perhaps curious, perhaps confused. Eve held out the fruit to him, and for a brief moment, time seemed to slow down. Adam knew the warning. He had heard the order directly from the Creator's mouth. He knew what that meant. But when he saw Eva before him, when he realized that she had already eaten, he hesitated, and in that moment of hesitation, the same desire that consumed Eva's heart was kindled in his. Without questioning, without resisting, Adam took the fruit and bit into it. That's when everything changed. The light of Eden seemed less intense. The colors lost their brightness. The sound of birds, once so happy, now seemed distant. And for the first time, emptiness. Something had broken. They felt it, but they couldn't explain it. They just knew they were different. And then the silence was broken by a new feeling, something they had never experienced before. Suddenly, a wave of consciousness invaded Adam and Eve. It was as if a veil had been torn away. They looked at each other and for the first time noticed their nakedness. It wasn't just exposed skin, it was a vulnerability that enveloped them completely, a discomfort that hadn't existed before. Innocence had been broken, and with it something even deeper. The peace of Eden had dissipated. Their hearts were racing, a tightness in the chest, a new suffocating feeling that they couldn't name: shame. Before, they walked through the garden without fear, without barriers between themselves or the Creator. Now everything felt wrong. They felt exposed, fragile. Desperate to hide this feeling, they ran to a nearby fig tree. They tore leaves, trying to cover their bodies, as if the problem was just on the skin. But deep down, they knew the problem was much bigger. The leaves were fragile, insufficient, but it seemed to be all they had. And then, in the midst of that whirlwind of confusion, a familiar sound echoed through the garden. Steps, the presence of the Creator. He had come, as he did every day, walking among the trees in the cool of the day. But this time, the sound didn't bring peace. It brought fear. Adam and Eve looked at each other, their hearts racing. For the first time, the idea of hiding from the Creator seemed to make sense, as if it were possible to escape from the one who formed them, from the one who knew the deepest part of their hearts. And yet, they hid, crouching in the bushes, panting, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't see them. But then, the voice echoed, not in anger, but with a deep, meaningful call. "Adam, where are you?" And there, at that moment, the leaves no longer seemed enough, and the silence of Eden seemed heavier than ever. The silence was broken. The Creator's voice echoed again, firm, but without shouting, without anger. Just one question that seemed to pierce through Adam's own heart. "Where are you?" The Creator knew exactly where they were. He didn't ask because he didn't know, but so that Adam could understand his own condition, hidden, embarrassed, separate. Adam, trembling, slowly emerged from the trees. The leaves still clumsily attached to his body. He could no longer hold his gaze. The Creator watched him, and the silence seemed to weigh more than ever. Then the confession came, almost choked. I heard your voice in the garden, and I was afraid, because I was naked, so I hid. Fear. For the first time, that feeling dominated him. Before, the sound of God's presence brought comfort. Now, it brought fear. But the Creator continued calmly, but with a tone that exposed the seriousness of what had happened. Who made you know you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree that I commanded you not to eat? Adam felt the weight of the question, but instead of taking the blame, fear spoke louder. He tried to justify himself, pointing to Eva. The woman you gave me, she gave me some of the fruit, and I ate it. Then the Creator's gaze turned to Eve, who, shaken, held the same fear. The Creator asked him, "What did you do?" And Eve, instead of assuming, did the same. She blamed the serpent. The serpent deceived me, and I ate. There was no turning back. The choice had been made. But the Creator did not speak out of revenge or thoughtless punishment. He knew the impact of that disobedience, and now the perfect harmony was broken. But in the midst of pain, while Adam and Eve feared the consequences, the Creator still kept a promise. The silence felt heavier. Eden, once so vibrant, seemed to have changed. The Creator, with his unchanging presence, looked at Adam, Eve, and the serpent. That moment wasn't just a conversation. It was the moment when the consequences would begin to unfold. Then God turned to the serpent. She, who remained motionless, would have no space to justify herself. The Creator's voice echoed firmly. Because of what you have done, you will be cursed among all animals. You will crawl on your belly and eat dust all the days of your life. The creature, which had once been beautiful, would now carry a symbol of humiliation. But the Creator did not stop there. His next words carried something even deeper, a mystery, a veiled promise that would echo through the ages. And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He will crush your head, and you will bruise his heel. A foreshadowing, a glimmer of hope in the midst of the trial. A descendant of the woman would come one day to defeat the power of evil. Then the divine gaze turned to Eve. She felt the weight of the consequence, and the Creator's words were clear. I will greatly multiply your pain in pregnancy. In pain, you will give birth to children. Your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule you. Eva understood. The beauty of Eden would no longer be the same. Pain, previously non-existent, would now be part of his journey. And finally, Adam, the man who had been formed from the dust, now heard the words that would echo over all creation. Because you listened to the voice of your wife and ate from the tree, cursed is the ground because of you. In suffering you will eat from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and weeds. From the sweat of your face you will eat your bread until you return to dust. For from dust you were formed, and to dust you will return. Perfection had been broken, but the Creator, even in the midst of the consequences, had not yet abandoned them. And soon he would demonstrate this in an unexpected way. Eden was no longer the same. The earth, once so vibrant, seemed breathless, as if mourning what had happened. The luster of creation had been tarnished, but the Creator, in his infinite mercy, did not leave them with just the burden of guilt. Even after disobedience, God did something unexpected. Adam and Eve, still covered by the fragile leaves of the fig tree, felt the discomfort of their vulnerability. The sheets were thin, temporary, unable to cover the real problem. Then the Creator, out of compassion, took skins from an animal and made clothes to cover them. It was the first sacrifice, the first sign that the price for sin required more than a simple gesture. Blood was spilled, life, to cover the consequence of the fall. It was not just a symbolic act. It was a shadow of what would come in the future, a harbinger of a greater perfect sacrifice that would one day restore all that had been broken. The promise made to the serpent echoed there, in silence. Someone would come, a descendant, a savior. But Eden, that perfect paradise, could no longer be the home of Adam and Eve. The Creator, in his justice, expelled them from the garden, not for revenge, but to protect them from living eternally in a state of separation. The tree of life was guarded. Cherubim and a flaming sword sealed the way back. Adam and Eve left the garden. The world that awaited them was different. The ground would now require effort. Pain would be part of life. But even so, God remained close, attentive. And the promise of the descendant still echoed. The story didn't end there. It was just the beginning of a journey of redemption that would span all of human history. If you like this story and want to learn more about the characters in the Bible and the Word of God, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to follow more stories like this. Tell me in the comments what you thought of the story of Adam and Eve. May God bless you.